from Sports Illustrated, longtime friend of this program, Chris Mannix, back here on the program. How you doing, Chris?
I'm good, Rich. How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. Let's get right into it. Rudy Gobert's not on a plane to Los Angeles. What happened in that huddle with Minnesota yesterday, Chris?
Certainly, the frustration of the first half of that game against the Pelicans came out. Rudy Gobert's been battling some health issues over the last few weeks. I think Kyle Anderson was frustrated at what he perceived at least to be a lack of defensive effort at that point in time from Gobert, and it just bubbled over. But, this has been a maddeningly inconsistent season in Minnesota. I mean, this was a team that expected to be at a minimum in the top four of the Western Conference standings after the Gobert trade. As we speak, they're going to enter the play-in tournament as the number 8 seed. So this was all something in the moment, but more importantly, a lot of frustration over the course of the season. And now, the Timberwolves will have to go into a critical game, without their starting center, and as well as starting small forward with Jaden McDaniels out for the year after punching a wall in that game. So the hits just keep on coming in Minnesota.
And if they only kept their hands to themselves in Game 82, right? I mean, so is this indicative as to why Gobert was available? I know the Jazz were obviously remaking their roster, and we saw what was going on with Danny Ainge walking into Utah, and Donovan Mitchell is now the star of Cleveland for a 4-seeded Cavaliers team that's hoping to crash some parties in the East. But is there any larger picture here with Gobert and what happened with this team?
Well, I think what you have to assess moving forward is, can you salvage all this? Now, Minnesota is going to be motivated to try to rebuild this whole thing with Gobert, with Towns, with Anthony Edwards going into next season. I think there'll be some substantive changes. Chris Finch is certainly somebody that there's some pressure on in the moment, but they gave up so much for Rudy in that trade that they simply can't just pull the chute on it right now, because even if they wanted to trade him, you're not going to get more than, quarters on the dollar for Rudy Gobert. So they've got to find a way to try to figure this out next season. Now, this year it's about more than Rudy Gobert. I mean, Karl Anthony Towns missed more than half the season, with a significant calf injury. So we don't know what the Minnesota Timberwolves at full strength really look like. And that, to me, has got to be the priority going into next year. This year, whether it ends in Los Angeles on Tuesday or it ends shortly thereafter, there's no chance of them doing anything substantive this year. But next year, they've got to figure out the right mix, because they've got way too much invested in Gobert to give up.
Chris Mannix here on the Rich Eisen Show. Huge game in Los Angeles. I mean, I can't believe I'm saying this. Things are breaking the Lakers' way, which I didn't. I mean, you want to talk about nobody saw it coming. They were out of the play-in tournament. Now they're the top seed, if you will, within it, with a Timberwolves team coming off of what we just discussed. I mean, things are breaking the Lakers' way, and then they'll take on Memphis, which will be great if they win this, obviously. It'll be a great first-round series. I assume Shannon Sharp will have tickets. It'll be great. Chris, don't you think?
Yeah, I think the ideal scenario for the Lakers would have been to finish at 6, because not only do you avoid the play-in tournament and give your older guys a couple extra days of rest, but you get a shot at Sacramento, which most people believe is the most vulnerable team in the top half of the playoff bracket. But this is probably the next best thing, because, yeah, you got to go through the play-in, but you get a wounded Minnesota team, you get them at home so you don't have to travel, and if you win, you'll be off till at least Saturday. So you've got plenty of time for LeBron James and Anthony Davis to rest those injuries, and you're no longer dealing with back-to-back, so you don't have to worry about that either. Look, Rich, I've been on the record that I think the Lakers win the West. I wrote that 3 weeks ago. I stand by it still right now, even as they go into the play-in. The defense has been great. Davis has been great. LeBron is great. Austin Reeves, D'Angelo Russell, these guys have been solid in their roles. If they don't beat Minnesota and they have to force their way in by beating the winner of the 9-10 game, then I'd be a little concerned, because I do think they need this 4-day break after the first play-in game. But if they do, and they get rested, look, they're not going to have home court advantage against Memphis, but Memphis is not coming into the playoffs, full steam. They're not going to have all their guys. Brandon Clark, of course, out for the year with that injury, and the Ja Morant situation is still kind of fresh. So I like the Lakers' chances against Memphis, against everybody in the West.
I got to be honest with you, Chris. I knew what you wrote. Just hearing it out of your mouth is jarring. You think the Lakers will win the Western Conference as you and I are sitting here the Monday before the play-in game for the Lakers at home. You think that?
I do. It will be unprecedented because, well, you have had, bottom seeds make a run to the finals before, but you haven't had a team in the play-in do it. And look, if you're looking for any extra motivation, would this not immediately rocket to the top of LeBron James's resume if he could lead a Lakers team in this position into the finals? Now, I don't think they win a championship. I want to be clear about that because I just don't think they beat Milwaukee or Boston or any of the top-tier Eastern Conference teams that are going to come out. But I look at the Western Conference field. I see a Denver team that is not great defensively. I see a Memphis team that is wounded. The Suns, a lot of people are high on the Suns. I think they're great, but they're a top-heavy team. And you're asking a lot of guys like Torrey Craig and Josh Okogie and, guys that aren't used to playing major roles in the postseason to step up and play big roles. So I think this is the year that the Suns are more vulnerable than what they might be in the future, and that's why I think the Lakers will take advantage. They've got a favorable bracket. Look, they wouldn't face Phoenix until they got to the conference finals or Denver. So you're talking Memphis, then you're talking maybe Golden State, maybe Sacramento. The Lakers went 3-1 against the Warriors in the regular season. So I just think things are breaking their way to have kind of one of those or surreal kind of postseason.
The Crossover NBA podcast host and Sports Illustrated senior writer Chris Mannix here with us on the Rich Eisen Show. What do you think the NBA investigation of the Dallas Mavericks is going to quote unquote turn up, Chris? I mean,
not much because look, I think the Mavericks could have been a little more subtle with it, and maybe because of that, the NBA will fine them, but this just can't rise to the level of docking Dallas a draft pick because too many teams do it. They just don't do it in as overt a way. Look, the NBA didn't punish Oklahoma City a few years ago when they just decided not to play Al Horford in the second half of the season. Oklahoma City has not played Shai Gilgeous-Alexander for stretches. They claimed one year they were resting Lou Dort because he had to get ready for the Canadian national team. There's just some goofiness that goes on in the NBA in the second half of seasons. I think the Mavericks, they just took a bullhorn and announced what they were going to do, basically, and that's not something the league office, takes kindly to. But outside of a fine, I just don't see anything substantive happening to Dallas.
So then how does a team go from last year's Western Conference Finals to as a 6th seed with a nice head of steam, thanks to a Kyrie Irving acquisition, wind up pulling the plug on the season the Friday before the playoffs? How the hell did that happen, Chris?
Well, it all goes back to the Jalen Brunson decision. And, Mark Cuban has tried to rewrite history a little bit over the last, couple of days. But the reality is the Mavericks had multiple opportunities to lock Jalen Brunson up before he became a free agent, and they didn't do it. And because of that, he was able to walk to the Knicks. It left Dallas with a huge void at the point guard position and a huge void when it comes to a player that has proven he can play next to and succeed with Luka Doncic. That killed them going into the year. The Kyrie deal, I don't blame Kyrie Irving for what happened down the stretch in Dallas. I talk to people down there all the time, and the message I'm often given is that, look, Kyrie's been a good guy. He's been a good soldier. He's trying to fit in. Maybe he's trying to fit in too much, and we saw that early in his tenure in Dallas. The problem with this team is that it was just put together in the wrong way. They don't have great defenders. They don't have rim protectors. All the things you need to be a successful playoff team, they don't have. To get Kyrie Irving, they had to trade Dorian Finney-Smith. There was this big to-do about Maxi Kleber coming back after the All-Star break. Maxi Kleber is fine, but he's not Dikembe Mutombo. And when you have two, legitimately below-average defenders at the guard spots, you need a Dikembe Mutombo to clean up a lot of their mistakes. So This is a team that, they're going to try to bring back Kyrie Irving, and if I was going to make a bet on it, I'd say they probably will. But it's not going to lead to a dramatic turnaround just having a full season with them. They need to find defensive-minded players. And as you know, guys like that are not a dime a dozen. You have to really work hard to get players like that, and the Mavericks going to have to do that.
So Luka, when he said he's not happy, basically, he pointed out, I'm not smiling on the court as much as I used to, and then made a cryptic reference to something outside of basketball. Any idea what that is and if it's fixable, Chris?
Yeah, I think Luka's problem, from what I understand, is personal related. I don't know exactly what it is, but it was something that has bothered him in the last couple of months, second half of the season. Basketball-wise, look, he just wants help. And that's going to be the biggest challenge for Dallas because they have not historically been a free agent destination. They gave up most of their best assets to get Kyrie Irving. They have not had much success at all in recent years in the draft. And look, they're probably going to hold on to their draft pick this time around because they, went into that tank at the back half of the season. This is an important one. Like, it's going to be a lottery pick. They've got to hit on it. Somewhere between 10 and 14, they have got to hit on that pick because that might be their best chance to bring in something substantive to help Luka, to help Kyrie, to help this team build over the next couple of years.
In a few minutes I have left with you, Chris Mannix, the story, I guess, or narrative going into these playoffs, West wide open. East, however, it's going to be one of the top three. It's a top-heavy conference. Is there a team that you could identify that could crash that party that we're not talking about in the East?
Well, Miami is the obvious one you look at because the Heat, they have been a mess all season long. Kyle Lowry, when he's played, has not been the same guy we've seen in recent years. But if they wind up winning their play-in spot and facing Boston in the first round, look, that's basically the same team that came within, inches of a Jimmy Butler three-pointer of beating the Celtics in the conference finals last year. And, guys like Butler, guys like Bam Adebayo, even guys like Lowry and Tyler Hero, guys that have been there before with this Miami team, I'd be a little worried about them in the first round of the playoffs because they're battle-tested. They've got a great coach in Eric Spoelstra. And, Boston, as talented as they are, and they're a deeper, more talented team than Miami, they've got some question marks there. Like, can Robert Williams stay on the floor? Joe Mazzulla, his first postseason as an NBA head coach, and he's going into the playoffs. He already hemorrhaged, one assistant, with Damon Stoudemire leaving, and they never actually filled his spot when he took over for Ime Udoka. So I think the Celtics, even though, on paper they look like the far superior team, if I'm looking at first-round teams that are the most vulnerable, if Boston plays Miami, I would probably put them on the list.
Any issue with Brown's hand, despite stitches? What do you got for me?
It seems like it's going to be okay by Saturday, Sunday. He had a massive wrap around his hand a few days ago. In the subsequent game, that wrap was significantly smaller. So everything I'm hearing is that come the playoffs, which again for the Celtics, thankfully, is could be 5-6 days away. He's going to be okay for the start of it.
Okay, and what other injuries? Paul George for the Clippers. I know Zion is I can't believe we're still talking about his lack of availability here.
Update that Pelicans sent out goes in the non-update Hall of Fame. That was like a bunch of words that meant nothing. Like they put out there, like Zion Williamson is continuing to work hard. Like that was basically it. And look, he's not going to play in the play-in tournament for sure. If by some miracle the Pelicans get into the playoffs, I wouldn't expect him in the first round. That's for sure. Same thing with Paul George. Like I don't know. I know there's been some reporting that he's making progress, but for the last few weeks, since Paul George's injury, everything I've been hearing is that the Clippers were effectively preparing to go into the first round without Paul George, and they could not have drawn a worse first-round matchup. Like, you think they could use a defensive-minded wing in a series they're going to have to match up with Kevin Durant and Devin Booker? Like, that's going to be a very difficult matchup for the Clippers to win.
Okay, and then do you want to, before I let you go, add your boxing analysis to Gobert? What was more impressive, the reach? What was it? His reach was impressive.
I wouldn't call it impressive at all, actually.
Oh.
No leverage on the punch. I mean, you're talking about a 7-footer, 280. You got to really step into that punch if you're going to throw it. But look, to Gobert, I don't know if it's to his credit, but that would have been a lengthier suspension if he went for his head. I'll tell you that much. Like Gobert, he aimed for the chest on that. Gobert could have aimed for the head. If he had taken a swing and connected with the jaw of Kyle Anderson, not only would Kyle Anderson probably be in some trouble, physically, but we would have seen the last of Rudy Gobert at the least for this season, and maybe the last of Rudy Gobert in Minnesota.
Well, he figuratively and literally punched down. I still can't believe, I understand that we didn't even talk about Mason Plumlee and Bones Highland. I just can't believe that this happened in the final Sunday twice. It's kind of nuts.
I'm more bothered by the Jaden McDaniels punch. Like,
what's he doing?
What are you doing? Like, you hit a concrete wall. Like, that video was crazy, too. Like, he just winds up and cracks the concrete wall. And a split second after he does it, he knows exactly what happened. Yeah. Like, you can see him cradle his hand immediately, and he knows exactly what he did. So to lose, a guy like McDaniels, who's an elite defender, great player, to lose a guy like him at that, because of that, that's even crazier than Rudy, heat of the moment, going after Kyle Anderson.
Well, look for more of my texts and calls, Chris. Certainly when you're out here in Los Angeles, we'll have you back in here. Enjoy the play-in tournament. And those stats still go nowhere, right? Or are we going to start compiling play-in tournament history stats? Otherwise,
I've actually asked that a couple of times. They're not really sure yet. Those stats right now do currently go nowhere.
They go nowhere.
I wouldn't be surprised in the future to see them eventually folded into the postseason.
Why not? I don't understand. They are technically, it's a playoff game, right? It's an elimination game for the loser tomorrow night. Wednesday night.
I agree with you.
It's an elimination game. It is.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the NBA kind of got caught a little underprepared in the bubble when they did. That was the first year they did it.
Right.
They said, these stats are nothing, But now, I think when we move forward, we'll see them become playoff statistics.
If I'm not mistaken, didn't Curry have one of his best games in quote unquote playoffs? Right? Didn't the Warriors and Lakers play a play-in game once, and it was dynamite? And those stats went nowhere.
Lillard had one too, maybe.
That's right.
Tatum had a 50-point game.
Right. Pat Bev cried for nothing. But he's back. Oh, by the way, he's back. He's back in the play-in tournament. Yep. What happens if the Bulls move? Right, the waterworks 2 years in a row. It'd be fantastic. See, I'm giving you plot lines. So you're welcome.
I appreciate that.
Take care, Chris. Thanks for the call. Brother.
You got it.
That's Chris Mannix. Everybody follow him at SI Chris Mannix on Twitter. Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.